All right, guys, we are here on the very first Patriot Podcast. And as you guys know, Patriot Hard Seltzer is committed to giving back to the men and women who serve this country in the various capacities that may be. The military, the veterans, the first responders, the nurses. These are all groups that are very important to this country and it functioning properly. So we are here with one of those today. Jason, you want to give a brief intro for our guest here?
Yeah, guys, super honored to be presenting to you one of our newest Proud Patriots. It's one of the goals of Patriot Seltzer that we will continue to honor those who are part of the protector community that have given back, as Justin talked about. And over the years, we will continue to find amazing individuals who have done something to give back to our great nation and will become part of the Proud Patriot community. Today's Proud Patriot is a great friend of mine. I've known him for quite a few years now. But I'll tell you what, his reputation goes far beyond since we met. It goes back actually over 30 years. Lou Valoze served 26 years in federal law enforcement, guys, all across this country. Undercover work, infiltrating some of the most dangerous organizations in the United States of America, and many from international organizations who came in from abroad, cartels, high-level motorcycle gangs, mafia organizations, and Lou was involved in many of those things. He is credited with recovering millions of dollars in illicit substances, and what he's known the most for and featured in a Discovery Channel show is Lou is recognized as the federal agent who recovered the most criminal weapons off the street than any other federal agent in history. Over 1,000 criminal guns pulled off the streets. So, guys, it is an honor to announce our newest Proud Patriot, my man, federal agent Lou Valoze.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. It is my honor to be a part of Patriot Seltzer, to be a part of this team, especially right here at the inception, and get this thing going. I love the mission, I love the cause, I love the product, so I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's dive into it. I know you have an illustrious career serving this country in various capacities as a law enforcement agent. Where did that begin? Like, what brought you to that career path? Did you always want to do that growing up, or is that kind of something you fumbled your way into?
That's a funny question because law enforcement was not on my radar growing up. I didn't come from a family of cops, and it was just never on my radar. And I stumbled my way through college, earning a degree in business and economics that I had no intention of ever using. And it was just a chance encounter with an undercover DEA agent he was the brother of a guy I had played football with in college. And I met him one day in the Bronx. We sat down and had a beer, and he was a cool-looking guy. He had the Beretta in his waistband. He had the long hair. He started telling me a little bit about his job, what he could tell me. He had just come back from Peru working undercover. And I found my calling in that conversation. He's talking to me about what he does, and the skies opened up for me. I could do that.
Yep.
I knew I could do that. And I didn't really want to be a uniformed police officer. I didn't want to be out there pulling people over, writing traffic tickets. I wanted to work undercover when I heard this. And, I grew up in the Miami Vice days, and there was this imagery of undercover work and what it was like. And there was, yachts and supermodels and champagne and Lamborghinis.
Exactly like that, right?
I found out, after that conversation with that DEA agent, it was probably an 8-year period before I actually did my first undercover deal, because you don't just become an undercover agent. Like, you don't just become a Navy SEAL, right? You pay your dues. But what I learned real quick was there were no yachts, there were no supermodels, and there were no Lamborghinis. It was trailer parks and ghettos and projects. I was driving hoopties, and there were crack addicts, not supermodels. The undercover world is ugly. It's an ugly world that you have to live in. But I loved the cause. I loved what it was all about, because in the undercover world, law enforcement, the government gets to place their own asset directly in with the bad guys. And there's nothing better than that. It's real-time intelligence and it's real-time evidence. And I became that asset, and I was able to do that. And from my first undercover deal, which was a very simple gun deal off of a gangbanger, a convicted felon, I fell in love with it. I became addicted to it, and I was lucky enough to work with the greatest men and women in law enforcement and do it for the rest of my career.
So on that first operation, what is it like to go undercover for the first time? And like, is that how do they? Well, first off, how do they train you for that? Like, is that what kind of practice do you do ahead of time to get into that?
Another interesting question, because when I came on, they gave you a gun and a badge on your first day before you even go to the academy, and I was lucky enough to get into an office and get my training officer, who became my partner, who was an undercover guy. And he asked me, do you want to work undercover? I said, that's why I'm here. Yep. He goes, okay, you're going to do a deal today. And
first
this
day.
was my first day with no training. And I met with the informant. His informant knew a guy who was a convicted felon who was in a gang who wanted to sell a pistol for $250. It was a stolen pistol. And so the informant was going to introduce me to this guy at a fast food restaurant, and Crystal Burger was the name of the restaurant. And yep. So we met at lunchtime, and I meet this guy. He's about 6'6", huge guy. The informant introduces me to him, and the informant runs out of the restaurant after the introduction. And I'm like, okay, that's how it's supposed to go. And the guy tells me to follow him into the bathroom, so I follow this big fella into the bathroom. And this is a fast food restaurant. There's a sink, and there's a urinal, and there's a toilet. And he says, "Come on in here," and he opens the door to the toilet stall. And so I walk in. He walks in behind me and shuts the door and latches it. And so we're face to face. And I'm thinking, okay, this is my first day and my first deal. And it looks like I've made some bad choices already, right? Because my options are limited right now.
Yeah, I mean, your heart pounding in your chest because you're thinking, man, if this goes south,
what are my options, right? And I knew there was going to be a gun.
So were you on the toilet side?
I was straddling the toilet. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
So it was not exactly
convenient if you suddenly
right. If I got really nervous, but luckily he was there to do the deal. My partner had given me $300. The guy wanted $250. I just pulled the $300 out and gave him a $50 tip. I just wanted to get this over with. He pulled a gun out from his waistband, gave me the gun. We walk out, and I wasn't sure. Am I supposed to break?
Did you check it or anything?
Nothing.
I mean, were you trained well enough by that?
Nothing.
No,
I
so
just took the
like,
gun.
I got a gun. Yep. Here's your money.
Good deal.
Did he ever act? Did he ever act suspicious of anything?
No.
Okay.
I think he might have been more nervous than I was. This guy. And when we walked out, I said, I'm thinking to myself, what's the protocol? Am I supposed to break bread with this guy? Do we get some burgers? And I said, well, you know what? I did the deal, and I ran out of there just like the informant had run out. Got in my car, and as I got in my brand new undercover car, and I'm driving back to the meet site, and I radio the team, tell them everything's good, I look at this gun in my console, and that was the best feeling I've ever had in my life. I just took this gun off the street, right? This gun, maybe it's killed a bunch of people. Maybe it's going to kill a bunch of people in the future, but now it's going to go into the ATF evidence vault, and it's going to be destroyed after this case is adjudicated. And that feeling to me was that I just made a difference. Yeah. Right? Throughout my career, I bought more drugs than I can even remember. As much money as we had, we were buying drugs, kilos, hundreds of kilos. But I never felt like I was making a difference, because you're not really hurting the cartel when you buy 100 kilos. And that's a drop in the bucket, even that quantity. But when you buy one gun undercover, you take one crime gun off the street, you're saving lives. Yep. Buying guns is different. There's an art to buying guns. And I really felt like I was making a difference. And as a law enforcement officer, I know this sounds corny, but I always kept it in my mind that I work for the taxpayers. That's who is paying my salary, the taxpayers. And my job is to keep the community that I'm working in safe. And the best way to keep the community safe is to target the trigger pullers and get the guns out of the hands of the criminals. And that was my mission. And that was so satisfying to me throughout my career, to know that I'm getting these guns off the street.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, 26 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
How the average undercover operation that you built, I know that there were some cases that it took months, if not maybe
years.
longer, to build years to actually build a profile and build an individual. So over a 26-year career, I'm sure there are a lot that stand out to you. What were some of the ones that stood out the most, that you had to be invested the most? And was there ever a point that you ever felt like you were starting to lose yourself in that role? Like, hey, I'm so deep in this and I'm having to play this role. Like, did you ever feel like you were losing touch with who you were?
Absolutely. Toward the end, it is almost impossible. The smart men and women who work undercover get out after about 6 or 7 years. That wasn't my mindset.
That's why we're friends, because nobody's accused us of being smart.
Never. That's never happened. After 6 or 7 years, what was going through my mind was, wow, you just got really good, right? You're warmed up now. Yeah. Let's push this thing. Let's keep going. And that's how I felt, because it was a passion for me. And so it is almost impossible not to start believing your own hype if you're working undercover for that long. Because, my other identity, Sal Nunziato, that's who I was. He was a fun guy, right? Everybody loved Sal Nunziato. Lou Valoze had problems, right? I had to go home and man, the grass wasn't mowed, and I'd been away, and there was, always trouble at home when you've been gone for the last couple of years. You're behind on bills. You're not taking care of your responsibilities. But Sal Nunziato, man, he always had money in his pocket. He had fake passports, driver's licenses, fun to be around. He bought drinks for everybody. Everybody loved him. So it was much easier to go back into that life.
Yeah.
And that becomes a problem as the years go by. But to go back and talk about like the cases that meant the most to me, if you want to call them my greatest hits, I guess there are some that always stood out. A murder for hire that I did. ATF, we were kind of known as the undercover guys, the men and women who specialized in undercover more than any other agency. And we had a lot of fortes, a lot of things that we just got really good at. Infiltrating outlaw motorcycle gangs, infiltrating the mafia, infiltrating home invasion crews, which became a huge thing. Murder for hire. I did 3 murder for hires throughout my career. One that really stood out was a very prominent doctor hired me to kill his wife.
Wow.
And the reason this case was significant was that I met with the doctor on several occasions in person, and we also had several phone calls. And at the end of the case, almost all these cases go to trial, a murder for hire, and they're always going to claim entrapment. That's the natural defense for a murder for hire. But he had actually provided me with the gun to kill his wife. He had given me a down payment. He had given me all her information, where she works, where she lives. We had talked extensively about how I was going to commit this murder. And once again, it wasn't just words. He gave me the gun to do it.
Yep.
So he was going to have a very tough time at trial with all this evidence on the table. So he lost. He was sentenced to 18 years on a federal level for murder for hire, but they appealed the case saying that we had created federal jurisdiction. We had gotten jurisdiction because some of the phone calls he had made to me, even though we were both in the state of Georgia, he was down in St. Simon's Island in Georgia, and I was in Savannah. But when he called me, it bounced off of a tower in Jacksonville, the signal, back up to me in Savannah. So the phone signal had crossed state lines. If you cross state lines, that gives you federal jurisdiction. So his lawyer said, well, you fabricated federal jurisdiction. That's pretty thin. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court actually said, no, a cell phone in and of itself is an instrument, a facility in interstate commerce. So that made case law, which is a big deal if you're a police officer to have one of your cases make case law, but it also made it easier for everybody in the future to get your federal jurisdiction if the bad guys are using cell phones.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
yeah.
So getting into that, like, how does the ATF or any federal agency come across these types of cases? Like when this murder for hire case, like how did they find out about that and get you assigned to that? And like your background as a buyer or as a
hitman.
Yes. Yeah. How does that get developed and fleshed out to facilitate this?
If you're working in law enforcement at the federal level, state or local, 90% of your good cases are going to come from confidential informants. Okay. Confidential informants are essential to law enforcement. They are people who kind of live in both worlds. They live in the criminal world, but they help law enforcement. And they are an essential part of law enforcement, especially if you're undercover. I would say of my entire career working undercover, over 90% of my cases were initiated by a confidential informant because they can go places we can't. They can do things we can't do. And they have that ability to bring you in and make an introduction. And so at that point, that informant is the most important person in your life because your life depends on that. If an informant is bringing me into a violent outlaw motorcycle gang or, to the Italian mafia or to a violent street crew, my life is in that person's hands at that point. Once the introductions are made, now it's on the undercover. It's on you. I have to sell my product at that point, right? The informant's done their job. Now it's on me to not only gain their trust, but to make them comfortable enough to conduct their criminal activities with me and around me. Because always the goal in any investigation is to gather evidence, enough evidence to prosecute these criminals, to make them stop doing what they're doing.
Yep.
You can be a great undercover and infiltrate a biker gang, and you can ride with them all for years and years and party with them, but you're not doing your job if you're not gathering evidence. There's got to be a prosecution at the end. That's your mission.
Yeah.
Almost, a military mission. There is a goal at the end, right? A victory, a goal. And it's the same with undercover work. The goal is you are going to befriend these people and then you're going to betray them. Okay? Once you have enough evidence, then they get arrested, they get taken off the street.
Is that tough? Like after you've been embedded for so long, like you kind of, do you feel like yourself starting to become friends with these people, these buddies with these people genuinely, and you feel like you are betraying them when you have to do that at the end?
If you don't feel that way, you're not human. When you live with these people and spend years, and I literally spent years with some of these people, you develop a bond.
Yep.
These people, they're criminals, but there's always another side to them. They have families, they have friends, and you not only get involved with them in their criminal activities, but you get involved with them in their life activities. Yeah. There were, on numerous occasions, there were times when I had met these people's families. I had spent time with their families and with their friends, and there was no criminal activity on that side. And at the end, when you realize, wow, I'm important in this person's life, and
Yep.
I'm about to betray them. I'm going to do the worst thing that you can possibly do to someone. I'm going to deprive them of their freedom. Worse than killing them, as far as I'm concerned. On the federal level, they're handing out 30, 40-year sentences in these types of cases. And so you are depriving them of their freedom for the rest of their life. That's a serious thing. So after you've pretended to be their friend for, let's say, 2 years, all of a sudden, their house gets raided, they get arrested, and they finally realize that you were never their friend. everything you've ever said to them has been a lie.
Yep.
You've betrayed them. Now they're going to go to prison. You have to be in that courtroom and look them in the eyes and tell a jury about what they did. It's not easy after a while.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that takes a toll on you personally when you're done with that operation, like just looking back on it and yourself. I imagine you don't feel too great about yourself doing that, and you're like kind of like, how do you move past that and get on to the next thing and move beyond that?
It's not easy. The betrayal, after years and years, the betrayal starts to wear you down. You're a professional liar. You live in this world, in this dirty, filthy world, and you are lying constantly. So it's a very tough transition to live in a world of lies, and then to go home to your spouse and your kids and not lie, and act normal and act like an upstanding citizen. When you've been portraying this bad person, this awful person who lies constantly. It's a tough transition. So if you're on a case that might be going on for a year, 2 years, and you get a week break, it's hard to just flip that switch and go back to the law enforcement professional who you really are, because you've been living that other side. You've been living there for month after month after month. And who really pays the price for that is your family and your friends. That's who pays the price.
You have a situation, we don't need to name names, but you have a situation where someone that you were undercover for, I believe, a couple of years, right?
Yep.
And sent this person to prison. It was a high-profile case. But later, you guys became friends.
Yes.
So how did that feel? Because, I mean, I'm sure over the years you've looked at a lot of betrayal, and I'm sure there's no doubt in my mind there's a lot of hate that people will still have for you because
Yes.
of what happened. There's no doubt. I mean, it's just human nature. Betrayal is one of the hardest things. You build loyalty with somebody, you build a friend, and suddenly you find out that everything they told you was a lie. In this case, it's driven by purpose. We have laws in our country and accountability. But I know that individual also, and I think it's a cool story. Did that help you heal a little bit with, like, hey, someone who acknowledged I was doing bad things and I was a bad person, and, I forgive you, and friends.
So it's kind of funny that when I finally retired, I had really driven my career and my personal life. I had driven it into the ground. It just working undercover for so long. Again, I was addicted to the mission and the cause, and it took a toll on my personal life. And when I finally retired, I actually went to this person, went to his house, and it was kind of a role reversal where he was actually giving me a little bit of therapy. And this is a guy who had spent a lot of time in federal prison because of me and my partners. And now he was, you're supposed to go to prison. Here's how the justice system is supposed to work. You commit a crime, you get caught, you go to prison and you're rehabilitated, and you come out and you live your life right. That's how our system is set up to work, and that's a good system because it's a second chance system. It's the way it's supposed to be. Everyone who's in law enforcement realizes that it doesn't quite work that way. The level of recidivism in our country is out of control. So many men and women go to prison and they actually come out worse than when they went in because.
Can you explain? Recidivism is a big word. There's going to be a lot of people that don't know what that means. Can you tell people what that means?
So if you're a recidivist, that means you've been convicted of a crime and you go to prison and you get out and you just commit more crimes. You have not been rehabilitated. And as we all know, you don't have to be in law enforcement to know, it happens more often than not. And I truly believe that our prison environment has become so brutal that a lot of men and women do go into prison, maybe not as, they're not that bad. They've committed a crime. They got caught. They go to prison. They come out 10 times worse because to be able to survive in that environment, they have to turn into this animal to be able to survive, unfortunately. So when someone commits a crime and has, they've lived a bad life and they go to prison and they come out and they're a better person. They realize what they've done and they've decided they want to turn their life around. It's become kind of rare for that to happen. But when it happens, it really means something. Like, it means something to me. Because, the system worked the way it was supposed to work. And with this particular guy we're talking about, he had lived a bad life. He had done a lot of bad things. He was involved in an outlaw motorcycle gang. He lived a life of violence, putting dangerous drugs on the street, putting guns on the street. And he got caught. We caught him. And he went to federal prison. He changed. He found God, and he changed. And he came out of prison as a better person than most people I've ever met in my life. And, ironically, my partner and myself, we became good friends with this guy. He's held my kids. He's been to my house. I've been to his house. Our families know each other. It is a true case, and again, rare, but a true case of where the system actually worked. I wish it could work that way with everybody.
Yeah. I guess you kind of helped point out his flaws, and now he comes back to you because I guess in some ways he sees that like you're that guiding light. But for you, I'm sure as well, it's like it's so rewarding to see that like this guy, like you said, the system worked, and I did my job, and he went through that process in prison, and now he's a better person. I'm sure it's like on both sides, it's a positive, rewarding friendship there.
For sure, and it's amazing for me to spend time with him and see the faith and the hope and the optimism that he has after spending so much time in prison. I don't know if I could handle one night in prison. And this guy spent over a quarter of his life in prison, yet he still sees the sunshine through the clouds, which is inspirational to me.
Yeah. Cool. Did you ever have a situation where your cover was blown, or where where there was a suspicion of that you weren't who you said you were, that led to a dangerous situation?
My worst situation was in Chicago with, this was a case that had gone on for a year. This was the hardest case I did in my entire career. This guy was a member of an outlaw motorcycle gang and also a member of the Italian mafia. They call that the outfit in Chicago. And this is when the government found out that the Italian mafia and an outlaw motorcycle gang were working together. So this was a big deal. It was a case run by the ATF and the FBI together, and they had sent 3 informants in on this guy. He was not a convicted felon. He had never been caught. He was smart, super suspicious. He sniffed out all 3 of these informants. 2 of them were dirty cops in Chicago, and childhood friends of his, and he sniffed them out. He was sharp. They sent me in cold on this guy. No informant. It's one of the only cases my whole career where I didn't have an introduction. There was no informant to bring me in. Incredibly difficult. A lot of people, a lot of pressure on me. At this point, I had built up my reputation as an undercover, and my partner, the Chriser, who you know, chose me because I was Italian and for some other reasons to go in on this guy cold, which is the hardest way to go in undercover. And I was able to do it. It took months and months. Again, he did not trust anybody, but I was finally able to do it. And when I finally broke those barriers down and I started having meetings with him, started buying contraband from him, There was a day when the ATF not always up on the latest technology when it came to our undercover surveillance equipment. So he was his place where we would have meetings was so barricaded. I couldn't wear a monitor, so they couldn't hear me because he had detectors. So they didn't want me wearing anything that would monitor, only recording devices. And this guy was a jeweler by nature. So they always wanted me to double up on my recording device in case one failed, which I understand. But as an undercover, the more stuff you have on you, the less comfortable you are, right? So my secondary recording device that they gave me, this was the first time I had ever used this, was a watch. And I'm not trying to give up trade secrets here, but I don't want any undercover ever using this watch again. So I'm going to blast this out. They gave me this watch that was about twice the size of any normal watch I had ever seen, especially in thickness. Yeah. And I remember telling the case agent, like, I'm not comfortable with this. Like, don't worry about it. Right? You know, and this was a watch that had a secret recording device in it. Okay. And remember, this guy was a jeweler by trade. He knew watches. Yeah. Right. So now I'm in this fortress of his. Nobody can hear me. They couldn't even do surveillance outside because this is Cicero, which is a neighborhood of Chicago where Al Capone kind of had headquartered himself. Very crooked area. Couldn't do surveillance. My cover team couldn't even sit outside because the local police would call him and say, hey, man, the feds are outside your place. Because they knew the Fed cars. They knew the Easy Pass was a dead giveaway because no one in Cicero has an Easy Pass. Because no one in Cicero ever leaves Cicero. Yeah. So the cops would be like, that's a Fed. So I have no cover team, right? The cover team is so far away. The only thing they're going to do is avenge my death, right? They can't hear me. They're far away. So we're sitting down kind of like we are right now, and I got this big watch on, and it was all I could see in my peripheral vision was this watch while I'm talking to him. And in the middle of the conversation, he looks at it and points at it. He goes, what's that watch you're wearing, man?
Of course.
I'm like, wow, the bad guy is pointing to my watch, my recording device. I said, I don't know. I said, one of my buddies gave it to me. Let me see it. So when he said, let me see it, my heart went from here to here. Yeah. Okay. Take it off. And I hand him my undercover recording device. He starts looking and he goes, I never heard of this brand. I said, I don't know, man. I said, it's a watch, man. I said, a buddy gave it to me. He goes, why is it so big and thick? I said, dude, I don't know, man. I go, you like it so much, keep it. And I'm thinking, please don't keep it, right? And he hands it back to me, and the whole tone of the conversation changed at that point. And in undercover work, there's something we call the burn syndrome. Yeah. When you think possibly you're burned or the bad guy knows something, and instantly I had the burn syndrome. And that throws your whole game off. Yep. I mean, it throws everything off. Now everything's about this watch. His tone changed. Everything changed. I got out of there real quick. Yeah. At that point, I had my watch and I got the hell out of there. And I'm thinking 6 months. I've been in this 6 months. It just got ruined because of this watch. And now they had done a black bag operation on him, and they had cameras in his place. They had broken in at night and put cameras in. They couldn't hear him, but they could watch him. As soon as I left, he got on the computer and Googled the watch. Damn. So as soon as I drove out of there, I got on my phone and I Googled the name brand of the watch. And when I Googled it, the first thing that came up on Google was spy gear. Oh. So I'm on the phone to ATF, our Special Operations Division, saying yes.
Yeah, you guys almost got me killed.
So Chriser, who always, my partner who always knew what to do in any situation, immediately jumped into action. He got that company to send us overnight the same exact watch, but with no recording device in it. just to watch. And when I went back, and it wasn't a good feeling going back there, but a few days later I went back.
Watch so much, I got you.
That's exactly what I
Nice,
did.
Smart.
I said, man, you like this watch so much, I want you to have it, man. And sure as shit, when I left after that time, he was taking that thing apart. Luckily for me, that worked and the case went on. But I got to tell you, sitting in there with him, the place was a fortress, literally. And he was a killer. Sitting in there with him, because I could not wear a gun. I thought, I was like, man, this is probably it right here, because he's going to pull out a gun and shoot me.
That's tough, man. I bet you were, because your desires like crawl out of your skin and like, I got to get out of here.
And the worst part for me was that I could live with that situation if it was my mistake, if I messed up. But it wasn't my mistake. It was, it was ATF's mistake.
Yeah.
But I was paying for it, And
You would think they could put together a watch that's like a regular watch, a Rolex or whatever common brand, and then make it like a recording device. Maybe that raises more red flags.
Wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would think too. Yeah.
Technology is getting better. We're getting better. So.
Yes, yeah. But there was that burn syndrome would definitely creep in at times when, especially with the bikers. Bikers were so suspicious. They'd been infiltrated before. If you were a new face, there was going to be suspicion. Whether it was, they put us on lie detector tests. And taking a lie detector test with a guy with a short-barreled shotgun behind you is not a good situation. There were a lot of times where that burn syndrome I'm talking about was totally legitimate because these guys didn't trust new faces, and it made it hard in a lot of those situations. But you could almost always count on their greed overcoming their suspicion, because if you were making them money, they wanted to believe you so bad. Yeah. As long as you played your role, and were steady, usually. Well, luckily for me, always, I was able to get over on them.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, changing topics a little bit, I wanted to ask you about your time in the ATF. I feel like there's a lot of mixed feelings about them in the media and on social media. People are claiming that they're taking away our rights, taking away our freedoms, taking law-abiding citizens' guns off the streets. And I wanted to ask you about that because I know it's a hot topic. Like where do you fall on that? I mean, you seem to be a pretty pro-gun guy for law-abiding citizens. So I wanted to ask where you stand there and what your thoughts are.
And I can only talk from my personal experience. All of the incredible men and women that I worked with in the ATF and other agencies and state and local law enforcement, all of them were very strong Second Amendment supporters, pro-gun. I personally, I want every law-abiding citizen out there to have a gun and protect themselves. Has ATF gotten a bad rap over that? Yes. Do I feel that a lot of that is unjustified? I do. I never saw anyone go out and try and make a case on a law-abiding citizen and take their guns away. However, has ATF upper management made some really bad decisions and things that have made us look bad over the years? Yes. Some of these rulings that ATF has come out with, and I don't agree with ATF being allowed to make a ruling. A ruling is not a law. A federal agency can't make law. Only Congress can make a law. Yep. But some of these bad rulings that they've made, determinations, when it comes to bump stocks, when it comes to other devices, destructive devices, firearms, I don't feel that should be in ATF's purview. Let Congress make the law. That's why they're there.
Yep.
A federal agency should only be enforcing the law. But again, that is not the boots on the ground. That's not the street agents. There's been bad upper management decisions, and that's who ATF has to blame for a lot of the hate that we receive. But by and large, every ATF agent out there supports the Second Amendment and supports the right of all of our citizens to bear arms and protect themselves. It's essential.
Yeah. Well, cool.
So let's come full circle. You have spent a lot of time, obviously, law enforcement, the laws. You had to study law. You had to understand law. You have a lot of friends who are military or agents who went overseas when we talk about DEA and some of the other federal agents. What do you think about? We have a lot of individuals like, myself, you, so many others that we know who were willing. I call it the protector community, which is really what Patriot Seltzer is about, honoring the protector community. What are your thoughts on being a patriot and being part of the fabric that enables the freedoms? There are a lot of people who I don't think they fully understand what military, law enforcement, fire, first responders go through to make this country great. You've lived it, you've watched it, you have friends. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, one reason why I'm so excited about being a part of this team and Patriot Seltzer, the name Patriot, is that we live in the greatest country on this earth. And if you don't believe that, if you want to put that to the test, go travel abroad. Go try living in some other countries. Travel around, because there's no other country where you have these freedoms, these rights, and the ability. You have the ability in this country to do whatever you want, to become as successful as you want to be. If there's some hard work and some perseverance, this country affords you the ability to do that. Now, in order to have those rights, those freedoms, those abilities to succeed, there has to be a group of protectors who can protect our freedoms and enforce the laws that are necessary, whether it's immigration laws, gun laws, whether it's enforcing our interests overseas in other countries, with our incredible military, whatever that is, those acts and those the enforcement of our laws and our rules, it's necessary for the whole country to enjoy the freedom we have and to have that opportunity to succeed, because without it, it's anarchy.
That's right.
So if we don't have a military, if we don't have law enforcement, if we don't have first responders, it's anarchy.
Yep.
Our laws mean nothing. So we have to have men and women who are willing to pick up a firearm and enforce our laws, okay, and enforce the will of our government for the right reasons, and that is the protector community. That's what Patriot Seltzer is all about, and it's giving back to that community. That's why I love to be a part of this.
Yeah, we're honored. So guys,
Yeah.
Coming soon, man. This sexy guy will no longer be on the green can. Instead, I'm being, I would say you're one-upping me, but, you're about twice my size. So I'd say you're two-upping me. And the sexiness of Lou Valoze is going to be represented as the new Proud Patriot. Coming soon.
Big shoes to fill.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming out, Lou. I'm glad to get your story out there and tell people about what you do. And thank you for serving this country as you have. And we just hope to continue to see you serve in other ways going forward.
Man, I want to thank both you guys. Love you guys, and it's my honor to be on the Patriot Seltzer team.
Yeah, man. Next Proud Patriot, right there.
All right, let's go.
We're out.
Go.